Arrogant model taught a bitter lesson by an old man. The sun had just risen over the bustling Igbo village, casting a warm glow over the thatched huts and lively compound paths. Birds chirped joyfully, announcing the start of a new day. Inside one of the huts, Ifeoma stared from her sleep, her eyes fluttering open. She was known throughout the village for her striking beauty, but also for her sharp tongue and haughty demeanor. Ifeoma was a model and the daughter of a rich man in the city, but her father didn't like the way her arrogant character was bringing a bad image to the family, then sent her to the village to live with her uncle and aunt, who she also called father and mother, to see if they would help train her well. As Ifeoma stretched and yawned and stepped out of her room, her younger cousins scurried around, preparing for the day. Nnamdi, her little cousin, struggled to tie his wrapper correctly. Ifeoma, noticing his difficulty, snapped at him. "Nnamdi, can't you do anything right?" she scolded. "Must I do everything for you?" Nnamdi's face fell, but he said nothing, fumbling with his wrapper as Ifeoma stormed past him. In the kitchen, her aunt was busy preparing breakfast. The aroma of roasted yam and spicy sauce filled the air, but Ifeoma wrinkled her nose in disdain as she sat down on a wooden stool. "Auntie, must we always have the same boring food?" Ifeoma complained loudly. "Can't you try something better for once?" Her aunt looked up, a patient smile on her face. "Ifeoma, my dear, this food is what we have. You should be grateful." But Ifeoma only rolled her eyes. "Grateful for this? I deserve better," she muttered under her breath. Just then, her uncle entered the kitchen, his expression serious. He had overheard the conversation and decided it was time to speak up. "Ifeoma, you should appreciate what you have," he said gently. "Many people have far less." Ifeoma glared at him, her pride wounded. "Oh, please, uncle, spare me your advice," she retorted, standing up abruptly. "I have better things to do." With that, she stormed out of the kitchen to her hut, dressed up quickly, and left the compound, leaving her family in stunned silence. Outside, the village was waking up and the market was beginning to bustle with activity. Ifeoma's day of arrogance and disrespect was just beginning. She walked briskly down the dusty path that led to the village market, her chin held high and her eyes scanning the surroundings with a mixture of disdain and boredom. Inside her, she believed she was a supermodel and every other person in the village was below her standard. She blamed her father for sending her to the village to stay for some time with her uncle. The morning sun bathed the village in a golden light and villagers were already busy with their daily tasks. Ifeoma's sharp tongue had made her few friends, but that did not bother her. She believed she was above the simple folks of her village. As she walked, Ifeoma noticed an elderly woman struggling to carry a heavy bundle of firewood. The old woman's face was etched with lines of effort and fatigue. Ifeoma watched her for a moment, a smirk playing on her lips. "Look at you, old woman," Ifeoma said loudly, her voice dripping with mockery. "If you were so weak, you wouldn't need to carry such a load. Maybe you should have stayed at home." The old woman looked up, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and resignation. "Young one, we all have our burdens to bear," she replied softly, her voice trembling. Ifeoma laughed, a harsh sound that seemed to pierce the morning air. "Well, that's not my problem. Find someone else to help you." Without waiting for a response, Ifeoma continued down the path. As she neared the market, a group of children were playing a game of catch. They were laughing and shouting, their joy infectious. Lost in their game, one of the children accidentally bumped into Ifeoma, nearly knocking her off balance. "Watch where you are going, you little pest," Ifeoma shouted, her eyes blazing with anger. The child who had bumped into her looked up, fear and apology in his eyes. "I'm sorry, we didn't mean to," the child began, but Ifeoma cut him off. Sorry is not good enough. Don't you have any manners? Stay out of my way," she snapped, pushing past them roughly. The children, now frightened and upset, moved away from Ifeoma, their playful mood shattered. Ifeoma walked on, not caring about the tears she had caused. She was on her way to the market, and in her mind, nothing and no one else mattered. As she reached the outskirts of the market, the sounds and smells of the bustling place enveloped her. Traders called out their wares, the scent of fresh produce mingled with the aroma of cooking food, and the colorful displays were a feast for the eyes. Ifeoma strutted into the market, ready to continue her day of arrogance, unaware of the lesson that fate had in store for her. The village market was alive with the sights and sounds of a busy morning. Traders called out to attract customers, their voices blending into a lively chorus. Stores overflow with colorful fruits, vegetables, and handmade goods. The smell of roasting meat and freshly baked bread filled the air, mingling with the earth scent of the packed dirt and underfoot. Ifeoma walked into the market, her posture straight and her expression disdainful. As she passed by the various stores, her sharp eyes took in everything, but nothing seemed to impress her. She moved through the crowd with an air of superiority, her nose slightly upturned as if to avoid the commonness around her. At a store selling ripe mangoes, Ifeoma paused. She picked up a fruit, inspecting it with exaggerated disdain. The vendor, a middle-aged woman with a friendly smile, approached her. "Good morning, Ifeoma. These mangoes are the sweetest you will find. Would you like to buy some?" the vendor asked, her voice hopeful. Ifeoma sniffed the mango and then tossed it back into the pie carelessly. "It is the best you have? These mangoes look overripe. How can anyone buy such low-quality fruits?" she said loudly, her words carrying across the market. The vendor's smile faltered, but she tried to remain polite. "These are the freshest fruits, my dear. I picked them just this morning." Ifeoma rolled her eyes. "I doubt it. You people don't know what quality is," she said, turning away before the vendor could respond. She continued her stroll through the market, her sharp tongue ready to strike at anything that displeased her. She came across a store selling beautifully woven baskets. The craftsmanship was evident, each basket intricately designed. The weaver, a middle-aged man with calloused hands, looked up hopefully as Ifeoma approached. "Good morning, Ifeoma. Would you like to buy a basket? They are strong and beautiful, perfect for carrying your goods," he said, pride in his voice. Ifeoma picked up a basket and examined it with a critical eye. "These baskets are so plain. I could make better ones myself," she scoffed, dropping the basket back onto the stack. The young man's face fell, his pride wounded by her harsh words. As she walked away, she muttered to herself, "These people have no idea what good work looks like." Finally, she neared the end of the market where a humble stall caught her eye. An old man was sitting there selling herbs neatly tied into small bundles. The herbs gave off a pleasant earthy aroma, but Ifeoma's lips curled into a sneer as she approached. "Look at this, so who will buy these useless weeds?" she said loudly, drawing the attention of those nearby. The old man looked up, his eyes calm and wise. "Young lady, these herbs have healed many. Mocking what you do not understand shows your ignorance," he said gently. Ifeoma laughed derisively. "Ignorance? You are the ignorant one, no? Selling garbage," she retorted, her voice dripping with contempt. The old man's eyes darkened slightly, but his tone remained even. "Be careful with your words, Ifeoma. From now on, whenever you yawn or sleep with your mouth open, ghosts shall spit into it." A hush fell over the nearby crowd, and Ifeoma felt a strange chill run down her spine. But she quickly shook it off, tossing her head defiantly. "We will see about that, old man," she said, turning on her heel and walking away, leaving the market buzzing with whispers about the old man's curse. The market slowly returned to its usual hustle and bustle after Ifeoma's confrontation with the old man. Whispers spread like wildfire among the vendors and shoppers. They spoke of the curse the old man had placed on Ifeoma, and the air was thick with a mix of curiosity and unease. Ifeoma stormed away from the old man's store, her heart pounding with a mix of anger and unease. She tried to shake off the strange feeling the old man's words had left in her, but a chill seemed to linger in her bones. She kept her head high and her steps firm, refusing to let anyone see that the old man's curse had unsettled her. As she walked, she could hear the murmurs of the villagers around her. "Did you hear what the old man said to Ifeoma?" one woman whispered to another. "He cursed her. Imagine, ghosts spitting in her mouth whenever she yawns or sleeps with her mouth open." "Serves her right," another voice chimed in. "The way she treats everyone, she had it coming, Ifeoma's friends, Chinyere and Amaka, approached her cautiously, concern etched on their faces. "Ifeoma, are you alright?" Chinyere asked softly, her eyes searching Ifeoma's face. Ifeoma glared at her friends, her pride refusing to let her show any sign of weakness. "Mind their own business. I don't believe in these silly curses," she snapped, her voice sharp. Amaka glanced nervously at Chinyere before speaking. "But Ifeoma, everyone is talking about it too. Maybe you should be careful. Ifeoma cut her off with a wave of her hand. "Enough, I don't want to hear another word about it," she said, her tone finer. She turned away from her friends, her heart still racing with a lingering fear she refused to acknowledge. As the day went on, Ifeoma went about her business, trying to ignore the curious glances and hushed whispers that followed her wherever she went. The market vendors, who had once been the target of her sharp tongue, watched her with a mix of apprehension and satisfaction. By evening, Ifeoma's unease had turned into a gnawing worry she couldn't shake. She returned home, her mind racing with thoughts of the old man's curse. As she prepared for bed, she found herself dreading the night, a feeling she had never experienced before. She lay down, staring at the thatched roof above her, her mind replaying the events of the day. "It's just a silly curse," she muttered to herself, trying to sound convincing. "Nothing will happen." But as she closed her eyes, the old man's words echoed in her mind, and the shiver ran down her spine. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a soft silver light into Ifeoma's small hut. The familiar sounds of the night surrounded her, the chirping of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. Normally, these sounds would have comforted her, but tonight, Ifeoma lay awake, her mind troubled by the events of the day. She tossed and turned in her bed, unable to find a comfortable position. Her eyes felt heavy with exhaustion, yet sleep eluded her. Finally, as weariness overcame her, Ifeoma let out a deep yawn, her mouth stretching wide open as she settled into sleep. Suddenly, a cold, slimy sensation jolted Ifeoma awake. She sat up abruptly, her heart racing with confusion and fear. She could taste something foul and unfamiliar on her tongue, and she spat repeatedly, trying to rid herself of the sensation. "What was that?" Ifeoma whispered to herself, her voice trembling. She looked around her darkened hut, but there was no one there. Only the faint glow of the moonlight filtering through the window illuminated the empty room. Fear gripped Ifeoma's heart as she realized what had happened. The old man cursed. It must be real. She had scoffed at it earlier, dismissing it as nonsense. But now, the reality of it sent a chill down her spine. "I can't believe this," Ifeoma muttered to herself, her hand shaking as she wiped her mouth with the edge of her wrapper. She lay back, but sleep eluded her for the rest of the night. Morning dawned, but Ifeoma felt more tired than ever. Dark circles had formed under her eyes, and a sense of unease hung over her like a heavy cloud. She tried to push the events of the night to the back of her mind as she went about her morning routine, but the memory of the ghostly spirit haunted her every thought. Throughout the day, Ifeoma struggled to stay awake, but her usual energy and sharp tongue were replaced by a weary silence. Villagers noticed her subdued demeanor, and whispers followed her wherever she went. As night fell once again, Ifeoma dreaded the thought of sleeping. She lay in bed, staring up at the thatched roof above her, her eyes wide open. Every yawn was now a source of anxiety as she fought to keep her mouth closed, fearing the consequences that awaited her if she failed. Night settled over the village like a heavy blanket, bringing with it a stillness broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Inside her small hut, Ifeoma lay on the mat, her eyes wide open with apprehension. She was determined not to fall asleep, fearing the curse that had plagued her the night before. As the hours passed, exhaustion began to take its toll. Despite her best efforts to stay awake, Ifeoma's eyelids grew heavy, and soon she found herself drifting into a heavy slumber. Her mouth fell open slightly as she succumbed to sleep, unaware of the consequences that awaited her. Suddenly, Ifeoma was jolted awake by a cold, slimy sensation in her mouth. Her eyes shot open, wide with shock and horror. She could taste something foul and otherworldly on her tongue, and she gagged, trying to expel it. "No, not again," Ifeoma whispered, her voice trembling. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding with fear. The ghostly spirit felt real, each droplet a reminder of her arrogance and disrespect. Desperate to shake off the sensation, Ifeoma got out of bed and paced her hut. She felt a deep sense of unease and regret. "What have I done to deserve this?" she muttered to herself, her hands trembling as she wiped her mouth with her wrapper. The rest of the night passed in a blur of fear and exhaustion for Ifeoma. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt the ghostly spirits invade her mouth, and she would wake with a start, gasping for breath. By morning, she was a wreck, pale, with dark circles under her eyes, and her once proud demeanor replaced by a haunted look. Throughout the day, Ifeoma tried to hide her exhaustion and fear from the villagers under her makeup and her flashy model looks, but she couldn't escape their curious glances. and whispered conversations. Some avoided her altogether, while others approached cautiously, their expression a mix of pity and curiosity. As the days turned into weeks, Ifeoma's plight only worsened. Night after night, she battled the curse, each time waking in terror as the ghostly spit invaded her mouth. Her once strong spirit began to falter under the weight of her own arrogance, and she became a shadow of her former self, though she normally masked it with makeup. The villagers watched with mixed emotion. Some felt sorry for Ifeoma, while others saw it as a lesson well deserved. No longer did they fear her sharp tongue or arrogant demeanor. Instead, they pitied the young woman who had brought this curse upon herself. But amidst the pity and whispers, a quiet transformation was taking place within Ifeoma. She began to reflect on her past actions and the consequences they had brought upon her. Slowly, humility started to replace arrogance, and a newfound respect for others began to bloom in her heart. Morning broke over the village, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. Ifeoma rose from her troubled sleep, her face etched with exhaustion and worry. Despite the night's torment, she was determined to face the day with a facade of strength. As Ifeoma walked through the village square to fetch firewood, she noticed the curious glances and hushed whispers that followed her every step. Villagers exchanged knowing looks, their voices dropping to murmurs as she passed by. Ifeoma felt the weight of their gaze, a mix of pity, curiosity, and judgment. Her friends Chinyere and Amaka approached her cautiously. They had noticed Ifeoma's transformation over the past few weeks, the dark circles that she tried to mask with makeup under her eyes, the haunted look in her gaze, and they were concerned. Ifeoma, you don't look well, Chinyere ventured softly, reaching out to touch Ifeoma's arm gently. Ifeoma pulled away, her pride wounded. I'm fine, she snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. I don't need your pity. Amaka exchanged a worried glance with Chinyere before speaking. It's not pity, Ifeoma. We're just concerned about you. You haven't been yourself lately. If she could have, Ifeoma would have turned and walked away. But the concern in her friend's eyes gave her pause. She took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. I've just had a rough time lately, she admitted reluctantly. But I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. Chinyere frowned, her brow furrowed with concern. Ifeoma, maybe you should talk to someone about what's happening, she suggested gently. Ifeoma's pride flared up again, but deep down she knew her friends were right. She couldn't continue like this, living in fear and exhaustion night after night. Maybe you are right, she considered, her voice softer this time. Maybe I do need help. Amaka nodded encouragingly. That old man lives on the outskirts of village, Joe. He can help you with that curse, and the spirits. Maybe go to him, he can help you. Ifeoma hesitated, her mind racing with doubts and fears. Could the old man really help her? And would she be willing to swallow her pride and seek his assistance? Before she could answer, a group of villagers approached them, their curious gazes fixed on Ifeoma. Did you hear about Ifeoma? One woman whispered to the other as they walked by. They say she's been cursed by the old man in the market. Ifeoma's cheeks burned with embarrassment and shame. The news of her curse had spread throughout the village, and she could feel the weight of their judgment bearing down on her. She turned away abruptly, unable to face their pitying stares any longer. Chinyere and Amaka exchanged a worried glance before following Ifeoma, their hearts heavy with concern for their friend. They knew that Ifeoma was facing a battle within herself, one that would require courage, humility, and the willingness to confront her own shortcomings. The sun was beginning to descend toward the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the village. Ifeoma stood at the edge of the village square, her heart heavy with uncertainty. She had decided to seek out the old man that cursed her, but fear gnawed at her resolve. With each step toward the outskirts of the village, Ifeoma felt the weight of her pride and arrogance. She had mocked the old man's warnings and dismissed his curse as superstition, yet here she was, desperate for his help. As she approached the old man's modest hut, Ifeoma hesitated at the entrance. The thatched roof was weathered with age, and smoke curled lazily from a small fire pit nearby. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead, and stepped forward. Inside, the hut was dimly lit by the flickering flames of an oil lamp. The air was heavy with the scent of herbs and smoke. The old man sat on a woven mat in the corner, his face lined with age but his eyes bright with wisdom. He looked up as Ifeoma entered, his gaze steady and knowing. Ifeoma, he greeted her calmly, his voice carrying the weight of years of experience. I have been expecting you. Ifeoma swallowed hard, her throat dry with nervousness. You cursed me, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't believe you, but now The old man nodded solemnly. Yes, I did, but it was not out of malice, Ifeoma. It was to teach you a lesson about respect and humility. I am aware you are a supermodel in the city, and your father sent you to stay with your uncle in the village for a reason. We often look the other way at the way you dress and behave, but there are ways to sharpen a blunt knife. Ifeoma's pride bristled, but she beat back her retort. She had come seeking answers, and she needed to swallow her pride if she wanted to find them. Please, old man, she implored, her voice softer now. Can you help me? I cannot continue like this. The old man studied her for a moment, his gaze unwavering. You have begun to understand the weight of your actions, he observed quietly. This is the first step. If to break the curse, you must show true remorse for your behavior. The old man continued, his tone gentle but firm. You must seek forgiveness from those you have wronged, and you must learn to treat others with kindness and respect. Ifeoma listened intently, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. She had always prided herself on her independence and strength, but now she realized that true strength came with humility and compassion. I will do whatever it takes, Ifeoma vowed, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. I will change, Papa. I promise. The old man nodded approvingly. Then the path to redemption awaits you, Ifeoma. But remember, breaking the curse will not be easy. It will require courage, honesty, and the willingness to confront your own flaws. With newfound determination, Ifeoma thanked the old man and left his hut, her mind racing with thoughts of the journey ahead. She knew that breaking the curse would not be a simple task, but she was willing to do whatever it took to regain her peace of mind and earn back the respect of her village. Night had fallen over the village once more, but tonight Ifeoma approached her bed with a sense of determination rather than dread. She had spoken with the old man, and though the weight of his words still lingered, she felt a glimmer of hope stirring within her. As she lay down, Ifeoma closed her eyes and took a deep breath, willing herself to stay awake. She was determined not to let the curse take hold of her again. The hours passed slowly, each minute feeling like an eternity as she fought against the heaviness of sleep. But as the night wore on, exhaustion began to overwhelm her. Despite her best efforts, Ifeoma found herself drifting into a restless slumber. Her mouth fell open slightly, and she immediately jolted awake, her heart racing with fear. No, not again, Ifeoma whispered to herself, her voice tinged with desperation. She could still taste the foul remnants of the ghostly spit, a bitter reminder of her past actions. But instead of giving in to despair, Ifeoma summoned her newfound resolve. She sat up on the mat, her mind racing with thoughts of the old man's words. Seek forgiveness, show remorse, she repeated silently to herself. The next morning, Ifeoma woke with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that breaking the curse would not be easy, but she was determined to try. With each passing day, she made a conscious effort to change her ways, to treat others with kindness and respect, and to seek forgiveness from those she had wronged. She approached the vendor who sold mangoes at the market, the same one she had mocked for her supposedly overripe fruit. I'm sorry for my disrespectful words, Ifeoma said sincerely, her voice tinged with humility. Your mangoes are indeed fresh and sweet. The vendor looked at Ifeoma with surprise, but her face softened into a gentle smile. Thank you, Ifeoma. Your apology means a lot to me, she replied warmly. Encouraged by this small success, Ifeoma continued her journey of redemption. She sought out the children she had snapped at during their game of catch, and she apologized for her harsh words. I was wrong to treat you poorly, she admitted, her voice gentle and sincere. Will you forgive me? The children, though hesitant at first, soon forgave Ifeoma, their young hearts quick to embrace the gesture of humility. As days turned into weeks, Ifeoma's efforts did not go unnoticed. The villagers observed her transformation with cautious optimism, their whispers shifting from pity to admiration. Some approached her tentatively, offering words of encouragement and support. You are changing for the better, Ifeoma, they would say. Keep going. One evening, as Ifeoma walked through the village square, she noticed Chinyere and Amaka waiting for her with hopeful smile. We are proud of you, Ifeoma, Chinyere said warmly, her eyes filled with genuine affection. Amaka nodded in agreement. You have come a long way, she added, her voice filled with pride. Tears welled up in Ifeoma's eyes as she embraced her friends. Thank you, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Thank you for believing in me. The village was alive with the vibrant colors of the morning sun, casting a warm glow over the bustling marketplace. Ifeoma walked with a newfound lightness in her step, her heart buoyed by the progress she had made on her journey of redemption. She had apologized to those she had wronged, she had shown humility and kindness, and now she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Ifeoma passed by the familiar stores of the marketplace, villagers greeted her with smiles and nods of approval. She returned their greetings with a warmth that had been absent before, her pride now tempered with humility. Near the center of the marketplace, Ifeoma spotted the old man's store. He was sitting quietly behind his table of herbs, a serene expression on his weathered face. Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. Approaching the old man cautiously, Ifeoma took a deep breath to steady her nerves. With tears in her eyes, she fell to her knees and begged for his forgiveness. "Please, sir," she pleaded, "I was wrong to disrespect you. Please, leave the curse." The old man looked at her with kindness. "Ifeoma," he said, "the curse was never about punishing you, but teaching you a lesson in humility and respect. Remember this. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Always be kind and respectful." With that, he handed her a small vial of herbs. "Take this before bed tonight and the curse will be lifted." Ifeoma thanked him profusely and followed his instructions. That night, she slept peacefully, no ghosts in sight. From that day on, she treated everyone with kindness and respect, and the villagers noticed the remarkable change in her behavior. The moral of the story is clear. Disrespect and arrogance can lead to one's downfall, while humility and kindness pave the way for a peaceful life. And sometimes, the most powerful lessons come from the most unexpected sources. This story is the property and copyright of New Phonics Illumination Limited.